there's so much going on in one's life on a moment-to-moment basis, just from one instant to the next. There's so much happening. But usually we attribute it to things that have happened here in our lives, because such and such a person said this to us, this is how we reacted to them, and this is the bad memory that comes up every once in a while, something that I can relate to, I can understand, I know this happened, or this is what might have happened if this other thing had happened, etc., etc. So the mind is always conjuring up these things. They're called also, in Pali, the word that the Buddha uses, sankhara. Sankhara has, in English there isn't just one term to define it. The closest ones are, for example, construction, mental construction. I like to use mental conjurings. Also, for me, it resonates very well with the act of editing, adding, cropping, editing, making changes to something. Usually there is the action of, mental action of making changes to something, adding, weaving, building over nothing. But they're so powerful because they're coming out of the mind. So we have the tendency of believing in them blindly because it's the mind, it's thinking, so it's these are my thoughts, so they're legitimate. So all these things are taking place on a moment-to-moment basis. Now the memory comes up, thoughts come up, and all of a sudden the mind is starting to construct all these images, all these possibilities, all these narratives, etc. As a person sits to meditate, or in daily life, they will look at these things as, oh yes, I remember this. Yes, I remember this. Yes, this is what happened then, and this. And if we are discerning, if we are aware, paying some attention, so there is an element of wisdom there, every so often we get a glimpse of, wait a minute, that never happened. Where did that come from? Meanwhile, the mind was like constructing all these things. Now, is this real or not? Well, it depends on how you look at it. Did it really happen to us in this life? If you know for sure they didn't, then they didn't. But they're coming around to our purview with images that make us confused to think whether this really happened or not. But one thing is for certain, they are there, and they are disrupting your calm, mental calm. Now, earlier I was discussing with you how there are all these situations, these series of incalculable, unfinished business scenarios. You have unfinished business, basically, from countless eons of lifetimes, where things had not been resolved, reaching a sense of closure, or a level of maturity, or an understanding develop because of some interaction. So these are very much, they can be considered as loose ends. The mind will never forget these completely. It will come back. But these will come back in the form of images that are far more relatable to you, coming from this life. Episodes, segments, images, situations, snapshots basically from this life, but with the propelling energy, the drive, the impetus, instigated by many of these influences from past lives that you have been engaged in at one point or another. So they pop up in your mind. So there's a lot of stuff that the mind is going through. When you're trying to be still, calm, these are things that you have lived through, experienced, or given opportunities for these mental tendencies, habitual tendencies, in one life or another, to have dominance over you, over your thinking. And now in this life, you are giving yourself the time of day to sit, to meditate, to be calm. But these little boogers show up, popping their heads. And now the meditator starts fighting with them, trying to eliminate them, just like that game with almost like a huge hammer that in amusement parks they have. You keep hitting these ducks or something that keep popping out of these holes, so you can, but there's no way you can win, because they're always going to be, they're part of you. And you've had countless lives, and each life you've had many experiences. So it is good to have this, to consider this when we're sitting, so that your expectations from yourself could be a little bit more laid back and more accepting, more tolerant of yourself in the mind. Because in one life, let's just say that, you're sitting here and you're wanting good things to happen, you want to have calmness and tranquility to develop in your mind. Fine, great. But oftentimes it's not going to happen overnight. It requires work. Just like it took you a lot of work to cultivate those other negative ways of thinking. But the momentum is huge when you compare it. In fact, it's incomparable to the amount of negative way of thinking and doing things and saying things, and to now. Now that you're trying to live a more virtuous, morally aware life, dedicating your time so that you can cultivate the mind and develop levels of insight and wisdom. It's pretty amazing for a person to make a 180, because let's just say it like it is. Life is still giving you enough opportunities to break precepts, to be angry, to lose it basically, to follow your whims, your senses, and do things, and do those things, and not care. But something is happening in you whereby you're saying, no, I'm going to be listening to the suttas. No, I'm going to be every day working on my virtues. It's hard. Sometimes I feel like giving up, but guess what? Apparently I can't give up. I gotta continue on my course. Ah, that's a good sign for a teacher to look at a student and see, yes, yes. But that doesn't mean that you're there in the safety of the harbor. You're back. You're safe. You're across the shore. You to the other shore. You've crossed the flood. No, you haven't done that yet. Because you will know if you have, and when you have. So I wanted to say these words so you can develop more tolerance towards you, and not fight with yourself. Not fight with yourself. Because the mind can be seen as that raft that's going to carry you from this shore to the other. And so long as you're fighting with the mind, you will not gain a sense of calm. Now this doesn't mean also to just let it do its thing, of course. When you're meditating and just keep accepting. Yes, acceptance is one part of it. Absolutely. But so long as you are not taking hold of the reins, taking charge of the mind, meaning you're not blocking off those doors, those windows, from where things are leaking, including these memories, these tendencies that I began first mentioning in this talk. So long as you're not in charge, in control of that, you're not going to go far. It's like somebody who is trying, like a warrior or a captain of warriors. If they don't control and have a say in how things are going to be executed, done, and if they say, yeah, sure, go ahead, do that, and then sometimes the enemy comes in and they spend some time with them, meanwhile they're on a mission, supposedly. Nothing's going to be accomplished. In fact, the whole thing is going to fall apart. And they'll never return home. So that level of dedication, that unabatable, that strong-minded, deliberate, resilient attitude towards no matter what happens, no matter what memories, images, tendencies, things pop up while I'm sitting, or when I'm building this space of mindful and clearly comprehending my experiences, that state which is required to be with you, at the very least in your wakeful hours. That level of control needs to be there. That level of commitment to shut the iron walls, the windows, completely. Not even leaving a tiny little crack in the... No. There is where I need you to be, with zero tolerance towards allowing them in. That is where we have zero tolerance. Because it'll be like that hole in the bottom of the boat, and you have a long journey ahead, and you're in the middle of the water, open water. So you need to make sure that if there's a hole, you need to plug it up very quickly and empty out the water quickly. That's like the enemy in the military, infiltrated. You got to get them out somehow. clean it up. Otherwise, nothing will be accomplished. So that's where we have zero tolerance. And the commitment has to be there. But the tolerance is towards ourselves when we are in that state, which will give you the opportunity to create space, room for the mind to settle. That the gates, the walls, the windows of leakage have to stop. This is where we have the Āsavas, for example. The Āsavas are, I like to translate them as contaminants. They have a leaking characteristic about them. Leaking in or leaking out. In both cases, they're not good. So if there's a flooding going on and you're in the middle of it, you need to make sure that, and you can't go, you can't leave, you need to protect your property. You need to close up the windows, you need to close up any, any kind of hole, any kind of dangerous situation that might make you lose that property, whatever it is. So you protect it, you insulate it. Now, similarly, when you are working with something valuable, let's say, I don't know, you're making tomato paste, or you're making olive oil, you're working with gold, or you're trying to basically keep the contents of something inside and not let it leak out. You need to make sure this container, receptacle, is very well in good shape. It doesn't have any cracks. If there are, it's nicely covered, protected, glued. So Āsavas play this role. Some people have called it outflow, some people have called it influx. Taints is another thing that sometimes they use. So they have primarily three characteristics. There's three kind of Āsavas, basically. One having to do with the desire, greed, lust, wanting something, so it leaks in to your awareness. The other one has to do with the becoming, getting to a state that you're not in right now. It could be about this life compared to another life, so you just want to get out of here, or you want to, because you don't like it. It could be a relationship that you want to get out of to go into a better relationship, or things to be better than this. The reality of this moment is insufficient for you to be happy with. So that's an Āsava. So you're always leaking out, in a sense, from this moment. And then there is the third one, the big one, is the ignorance one, based on ignorance, which basically underlines the other two. Primarily, these are the three Āsavas. There's also the view, having certain beliefs and convictions, and you're set in your ways, basically. That's another Āsava. Sometimes they use that. But these are at in the background, playing a major role in influencing you. Influencing, influx, leakage. And when you're reading the discourses of Lord Buddha and then the suttas, one of the things that distinguishes an arahant from other noble disciples is their pronouncement, their declaration. That they say, one knows the destruction of the Āsavas, the contaminants, for oneself, suddenly they're gone for the first time ever. Because up until that moment, they're always there. They're always in the background, doing something. Most of the time, if not all the time, we are unaware of this secretive, covert, ever-present role, negative role that they play. And as a person is developing in their practice and understanding, especially the wisdom, is growing and growing and growing, and moving closer and closer to Nibbana, despite having knowledge and vision of Nibbana, until they become Arahants, they are unaware of, they know that they're there, but they haven't gotten rid of it, the Āsavas. So one of the distinctive marks of an Arahant is there's no more Āsavas, which means every action they commit to, or they commit after awakening fully, it's just that, an action, without the added burden of a karma to deal with. So their actions are pure, because their minds are pure of the Āsavas. So they don't create new karma. The Arahant does not create new karma. And things become a lot clearer. As one progresses. But we must pay attention to these iron gates, iron walls, where nothing can seep through. It's not a screen door that little things can go through still. No, iron walls. We need those. Steel-like, with no cracks. And every time we sit, we're doing that. Well, that is the intention. But oftentimes people sit thinking they just want to be calm in the presence of all these influences and influxes without realizing that they need to play an active role. See, meditation is not a passive thing. You're also very active. You're standing guard. It's like a citadel. It's like a guarding the palace, the walls. You need to be aware. You need to be awake. And the loudest ones are the hindrances that come in. But sometimes there's even subtle aspects of these. Because we have certain leniencies towards some thoughts that we say, oh, okay, come on in. And good luck creating a calm and tranquil space for yourself where vision can happen. So meditation is not just passive. There's an active responsibility for us to maintain the walls, to protect ourselves in that space. Not just while sitting. We sit so that we gain the strength. It's like it has almost like a centrifugal energy, a form of collecting oneself in from where the rest of your life grows. You can actually always use that as a reference, as a refuge, as a respite, but at the same time as the source. Otherwise you're just floating around the air like a tiny little feather in the hands of the elements, the situations, the memories. So sitting meditation anchors us. It's absolutely required. So we need to not push it brush it aside and say, well, it's meditation is life and life is meditation, so we can go ahead and just do that. No. That is true to some extent. It needs to be supported by the sitting. Anywhere from half an hour to an hour, but at least sit. To gain that strength and understand your relationship as to how far you've come, or whether you have been falling behind, not doing enough work, and allowing the leakage to happen. So we need to stop the leakage. That's happening all the time. But this requires responsibility for the person, for their well-being of their mind. The emotions are connected to that, of course. So if you're getting depressed, sad, angry, etc., something else is taking place prior to that take over. There's a leakage. Yes, we can work with whatever's inside, and we need to dump the water out of this using buckets, using different techniques, getting them out. But so long as the crack is still there, the hole is there, there's going to be more of it coming. And meditation is not just constantly using the bucket to empty out. No, you need to make sure, first and foremost, it's blocked. Iron wall. So I know I've addressed several issues, but these are crucial, very important for the practice, for your sanity, for your awakening, for Nibbana. I'll stop you.